Freya was the goddess of love and beauty, and she lived in a palace in a beautiful forest beside a flowing stream. And when she sang, the sound of her voice was heard by the fish in that stream, and by the roots of the trees, and by the clouds in the sky. And when she played her drum, that sound was heard by the rats in the forest, and by the moss, and by the birds, and by the stars. And there was a garden in her palace, and in this garden there was a pool of water. And one day she went to that pool of water and looked down into the clouds and the sky reflected in that water, and she began to sing. And as she sang, those waters shimmered and changed, as though the waters themselves were beginning to dream. And soon in those waters, you could see not the clouds in the sky, but a star-colored horse galloping across the darkness of the night sky. And as she sang deeper into that song, the waters changed yet again. And now you could see in those waters a man in a long brown coat with a snarl in his heart. And he was standing in the center of Gladysheim, the great hall of the gods. And he was shouting. And suddenly he pulled a knife from out of his coat and he lunged forward. And then the waters shimmered again and reflected the clouds and the sky. Freya stopped singing and walked into her palace. And she hung her drum up on a wooden peg. And she walked through her palace and out the doors and into the forest beyond. It was midday, a beautiful day. The sun was high in the sky. The clouds were there. A beautiful day. The birds were singing. And then she began to walk through the forest. And she walked across the grasses of Asgard, and came to Gladysheim itself, the great hall of the gods, a beautiful round building. She went through the golden doors and walked across the pine needles on the floor, and all the gods were there, Odin and Frigg, Thor and Sif with the golden hair, Bragi the god of song, Loki and Nanna. They were all there in that place, and they welcomed Freya to that hall. And the table was set. There were candles on that table, and they were burning. A feast was on the way. And so all the gods sat down and prepared to enjoy that joyous feast. And then the door creaked open, and through the doors of Gladysheim came Heimdall, the watchman of the gods. And he said, "We have a visitor to Asgard, a man. He has come all this way from Middle-earth to here, and he wishes to speak with us." So Heimdall stepped further into the room, and behind him there came a man, a human. He was tall, dressed in a long brown coat, and there was a snarl in his heart. And Odin looked at him and said, "Greetings, traveler. You have come a long way. And anyone who journeys, anyone who travels through the 9 worlds, well, That person, that being, takes many dangers upon themselves. So we welcome you here, and we will nourish you heart and soul, as all travelers must be nourished and cared for. Have a seat and feast with us." So Heimdall and the traveler joined the other gods, and they sat down. And the food was delicious, and the wine and the mead were beautiful, and Bragi sang a beautiful song, and all the gods were happy there in that moment. And as they spoke and laughed and argued and sang their songs, the sun moved through the sky, and the day deepened towards twilight. And then, when the feasting was done, Odin stood up and he said, "Dear traveler, thank you for coming to this place. We welcome you here. But my heart longs to know who you are and why you have come." And so the man in the long brown coat, he stood up and he said, "I am a builder. I have come to help you fix your wall." Ah, now these were good words. For indeed the wall around Asgard was a mess. They'd had the war with the Vanir gods some time ago, and the battle magic of all the Vanir gods had put huge holes in that wall. It was made of mountains and stones, yes, but it was more like a collection of strange alien broken teeth now than a real wall. So they welcomed this news. And Odin said, "Wonderful. What are your terms?" And the builder said, "I will build you a wall in 18 months. That's how long it will take. I will fix the wall that is there, and I will make it higher so no one can get into Asgard ever. You will be safe here in Asgard. But I ask for just a few things in payment, just small things, really. I ask in payment, after 18 months, I ask for the sun, and also the moon, and finally the hand in marriage of Freya, the goddess of love and beauty." Well, he said this, and there was uproar. "Duh, absolutely not! No way!" Thor pounded the table. Freya stood up herself, and she said, "I am not a mule, sir. I am not a load of hay to be bargained for, to be thrown in any deal. This is no offer. This is an insult." So there was hubbub and clamor and chaos in that hall. And then Loki spoke, and he said, dear friends, maybe we should consider this offer." "Absolutely not. No, shut up, Loki. No. Loki said again, "Well, I'm just saying, perhaps we should consider this deal and think about it a little bit." So Odin spoke up, and he said, "Good sir, why don't you step outside, and the gods and I will confer." So the builder walked outside of Gladisheim. Odin cast a spell of silence upon that hall, so that no being could hear what was happening in that hall. And then they all spoke at once, roaring and arguing, yelling at Loki, "Loki, I've done this, is no way, absolutely not, no. And Loki said, hang on. I suggest we make a counter offer to this man. Yes, we tell him that, yes, indeed, we shall give him the sun that lights our days, we shall give him the moon, which lights up our nights, and we shall give him the hand in marriage of Freya herself. Freya, the goddess of love and beauty, who teaches us to see the beauty in all things, who owns that power which runs wild and cannot be owned, and lives in the peach and the leaf and in the mountain and in the stars themselves. I say we will give him, Freya, the sun and the moon, if he completes this wall in 6 months. 6 months, said Odin? That's impossible. Ridiculous. It cannot be done. Everyone else agreed. Impossible. Ridiculous. It cannot be done. And Loki said, Exactly. That's the point. We tell him he has to do it in 6 months. Today is the darkest day of the year. He's got 6 months till the summer solstice. He will not succeed. Absolutely not. But he may try. And if he tries, well, he might succeed in building a great deal of this wall. And we can just finish the rest of it ourselves when we have the time. And if he says no, well, we've lost nothing. Well, none of the gods were very happy about this idea, but at the same time, none of them could think of a reason why it would not work. So they called the builder back in, and Odin spoke and said, Sir, we have a counter offer, and it is this. We accept your terms. You shall receive the sun which lights our days, the moon which illuminates our nights, and also the hand in marriage of Freya, the goddess of love and beauty, if you complete this wall in 6 months. 6 months, said the builder. I cannot do that. That's impossible. "Those are our terms," said Odin. "There are no other terms." "Grrr," said the builder. "Well, all right. What if I use my horse? If you allow me to use my horse, Svadilfari, well, then you got a deal." "Absolutely not," said Odin, and Loki spoke up. "Odin, you're a cruel god, a harsh god. Let the man use his horse. It's just one horse. Him and the horse. He'll never finish anyway. You let him use the horse." "All right," said Odin. "You may use your horse." "Very good," said the builder. "And I ask for one final thing, and it is this: that I have the oath, the promise of all you gods, that no harm shall come to my person while I am here in Asgard. No harm at all, that I will be completely safe and free from danger while I am here." "Of course," said Odin, "of course. We would never harm you, absolutely. We all swear, do we not?" And all the gods and all the goddesses, they all swore they would not harm the builder so long as he was there in Asgard. "Very good," said the builder. "I will start at once." And he turned and he walked out of Gladsheim and into the deepening shadows of the twilight which was falling upon Asgard. And the doors closed behind him, and the gods, well, they went to feasting once again. And Bragi sang a song, and the mead was delightful, and the food was delightful, and so was the music, and they managed mostly to forget the deal that they had made. And then when the night had deepened, when the moon was shining and the stars were leaking down their beautiful starlight like a humming, white humming noise down into Asgard, all the gods left Gladsheim and went to their palaces and went to sleep. But some time later, in the darkness of the night, they were awoken by a sound. A huge, thunderous sound like this. It awoke them all up. Heimdall woke up. He went to his window. He looked outside. There was the broken wall of Asgard in the moonlight. And there, beside that wall, was the builder. And beside him was a huge wagon drawn by a gigantic horse, a horse the color of the moon itself. And in that wagon there was what seemed to be half of a mountain, one of the mountains from the mountain ranges deep in the heart of Asgard. And the builder just hauled it all there with the help of his horse, and he was working in the darkness on that wall. And Heimdall looked at this and said, "Wow." And then he went back to bed and to sleep. And so all the gods managed to sleep. And then in the morning the sun came up and spread its light over the world. And the gods awoke, and they looked at the wall, and they were impressed. Only one night, but the builder had done a lot. Already half of one of the great gates of Asgard that were made out of mountains, half of this gate was almost completely repaired. He was doing well. He worked fast, this builder. And so time flowed as time does. And days became weeks, and weeks became months. 1 month went by, and the builder did a lot of work. 2 months went by. Well, he worked hard that second month as well, and so did his horse. The horse could haul just gigantic loads on this wagon. Entire mountains, boulders of obsidian and granite, stalactites, all kinds of stony things he brought to that place. Iron and all kinds. Yes, he was working on that wall very quickly. 3 months went by, and the light in the day was increasing. Every day was getting closer to spring. 4 months went by. Spring arrived with the buzzing of the bees, buzzing and murmuring amid the flowers. And the rivers sparkled, and the light increased, and the nights were getting shorter and shorter. 5 months went by, and then weeks went by. The gods were getting a little worried. Yes, indeed. Finally, there were only 3 days left. 3 days left, and the night before that, those 3 days, well, the gods, they couldn't sleep. They were worried. They looked at that wall. It was almost completely finished. There was a little bit to do up at the top there, but this builder, he had 3 days left. He might actually succeed. So the gods all met in Gladsheim at night. They couldn't sleep. They were pacing around. Odin said, "We have to get out of this deal. This is ridiculous." "Yes," said Thor, "we have to get out of this deal." And Freya as well stomped the ground. "I am not a load of hay to be bargained with. How do we get into this deal?" And everyone looked at Loki. "Loki," said Odin, "you got us into this deal. You get us out." I just gave you the idea, said Loki. You all agreed, we all agreed to this. Yes, we did, but it was your idea. Do something, get us out of this deal. We have to break the deal somehow. And Loki said, and suddenly he laughed. Suddenly, an idea seemed to come into his head, and Loki let loose with this wild, whinnying, galloping laugh, like a horse itself, a beautiful laugh that filled the air. No one had ever heard Loki laugh in exactly this way before. They looked at him strangely. And Loki said, I have an idea. Oh, yes, it'll work. See you later. And he turned and he left Gladysheim out through the doors. What? Hang on, said Thor. No use, said Odin. So Loki went off into the darkness. The gods comforted themselves as best they could, and then they slept. Well, in the morning the sun rose, the beautiful sun which lights our days and brings light and warmth and love to this world. The sun shone up over the edges of the sky. It was dawn. And the builder was there, sweating and working, and there was his horse, Svadilfari, pulling a wagon load with huge stones in it, gigantic chunks of obsidian and granite, and the horse was straining and working, go, and the builder was urging him on, go, Svadilfari, you can do it, yes, 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 pulling that wagon load of stone. And then, suddenly, from out of some nearby trees, there came a mare, a lady horse, the color of the moon itself. And she had laughter in her eyes and a wild, whinnying laugh that came down like mercury cascading down a spiraling shell. And her eyes promised the answers to questions that Svadilfari felt he'd always had deep in his bones. And it was no contest. The builder still worked. Come on, Svadilfari, pull. And Svadilfari pulled a little bit. But then the mare was there with her laughter and her beautiful lavender lovely look that she was giving to him. And bang, just like that, he jolted free. He snapped the reins and he ran off after the mare, and the mare scampered into the forest, and the builder ran after them both. Ymir's eyebrows, come back, Svadilfari! Oh, but it was no good, no use. The two horses galloped away deep into the forest, and there they found a glade, and in that glade Svadilfari licked the ear of the mare. Well, the builder worked on as best he could, hauling huge boulders. He was a strong man, no question about that. He worked all day, but still, without his horse to help, he accomplished much less than he had planned to. Well, night came, the stars came out, the moon shone down, and then came the second day, this whole day, and it was once again like the day before. Again the builder was there. At dawn again, Svadilfari was hauling a huge load of stone, moving it into place. He just had to fix this one last place up high on the wall, and he could do it. He had 2 days. He knew he could do it. He was sure he could do it. And Svadilfari was there sweating, and then from out of the trees once again came the mare. The moon-colored mare, beautiful like a song itself, on 4 legs, and her hair was beautiful, and she came, and she had laughter in her eyes, and she looked at Svadilfari, and she invited him to a secret horse-like dance, and he knew the answer to that. He snapped free of the reins. He went galloping off with that mare deep into the depths of the forest. And the builder cursed and tried to follow, but could not follow, and the horses found themselves in a beautiful glade with the grasses whispering with wind. And there the mare chewed on the ear of Svadilfari. And they were happy together, and they made a music of 2 souls being together in the deepest way possible. A lovely nod, a question and its answer, a lovely dance of music and moonlight there in the broad daylight in the depths of that forest. And the builder? Well, he sweated and cursed and moved this way and that, tried to get the boulders up there to the wall. He did pretty well for one fellow all day, but again, he did not accomplish as much that day as he had planned. Well, so it went. And the night came once again, and the gods saw what was happening, and they were beginning to be pleased. Finally, the sun rose on the last day. The last day. The wall must be finished by sunset, or the deal was off. Once again, there was the horse Svadilfari. Once again, there was the builder. Once again, there was the beautiful mare, the color of the moon, coming out from between the whispering trees. Once again, she called and she sang with her eyes and her beautiful voice. It was no contest. What could happen? What do you think could possibly happen? Well, the builder cursed. Svadilfari broke free. He ran off into the forest. Well, this way and that way, the builder, go, Svadilfari! And the mare and Svadilfari, the horse, were off in that forest, playing together, laughing together, being joyous together in every way they knew how. And the builder sweated and cursed, and he tried to finish it himself. There was a hole up there at the top. He had to fill it up. He was moving boulders like this, huge chunks of granite up there. He was working hard, but the sun was merciless in its movements. Is it not? Is it not? We all know this. The sun does not stop for no man or god or being of this world. The sun descending towards the horizon, beautiful and merciless. It cannot be stopped. He saw the edge of that sun hit the horizon. He had a few more boulders to move. He was sweating. He was sore. He moved one into place. Oh, he was not going to make it. The sun went down. Red light covered Asgard, came out from the sun, and then finally it was over. The sun was down and the wall was not finished. And the builder threw down the stone he was carrying in a great rage, and he thundered across the grasses of Asgard and went to Gladsheim, and he beat open the doors, and he went in, and all the gods were there. And he said, "You lying, scandalous gods, you've lured my horse away. You've tricked me. You made a deal, and you have broken that deal. I demand payment." And Freya stood up, and she looked at the man in the long brown coat, the builder, and she said, "Broken the deal? No, sir, we have broken nothing. What has happened here is simply love. Love which lives in all things, which sings inside the seed and the sting of the bumblebee and the flower and the roots that power the trees that flourish up into the springtime sky. Love is in all things. It is a great flood. It cannot be turned aside. All those who make agreements must reckon with love. It is the song in the heart of every star and every stone, and love is a part of every deal." And then the builder grabbed the knife from his coat and he pulled it out and he yelled, "You lying witch!" And he ran forward, lunging towards Freya. But as he did so, Thor cast his hammer across the room. It came whistling through, bang, and it hit the builder in the side of the chest and drove him against the wall with the force of the blow. And the light went out from his eyes and he slumped to the ground and he was no more. Life was gone from his body. And the gods came and looked at him, and as they did so, changes began to happen to his body. His hair became frosty, and then it became like ice. And his skin and his bones, they became blue and like stones themselves. And his face became even more snarly, and like a twisted rock in the center of a great hill. And Thor looked down at him and said, "Ah, frost giant, I should have known." And Freya said, "Yes, a frost giant. And even the frost giants desire the delights of love." So they hauled the body of the builder, who in fact had been a frost giant, out of Gladsheim, and they built a pyre there, a funeral pyre, and they burned his body on that pyre. And they sang the old songs to their fierce and beautiful enemy, the frost giant, who had wanted to steal the sun and the moon and the delights of love from the gods. Ooh. And the ashes of that fire gathered on the ground, and the smoke rose up, obscuring the stars. And all the gods were relieved that they'd found their way out of that deal. But Odin was troubled. He stayed in the shadows pondering, thinking, remembering that all the gods had promised not to harm the builder so long as he was there in Asgard. And this troubled Odin. For if the gods break their vows, if the gods cannot keep their promises, then how long can the world last? Well, after another feast, the gods slept, and in the morning they awoke, and the sun shone down. And the day was beautiful, and they looked at their wall, and there was a beautiful wall there. And with just a little work by themselves, they were able to finish that wall. And so now Asgard was completely surrounded by a beautiful, strong, impregnable wall made out of mountains. And they felt good that no one would come in, no hostile forces would come and attack them, and they would be safe. So all seemed well. And day followed day, and weeks went on to become months, and time went on. But Loki could not be found. He was nowhere. They wondered what he had done, how he had solved this problem. He did not seem to be anywhere. Months and months went by, a long time. The seasons changed, and still there was no Loki. The beautiful disaster of his presence was not there in Asgard, and they missed that presence a little bit. But after a while, they got used to it. And then some time later, in autumn, Odin was walking through one of the forests of Asgard, and the leaves were rustling and crackling beneath his feet. And suddenly he heard a sound, a laugh, a great galloping, whinnying laugh, and he turned and looked, and there beside a tree was Loki. And Loki said, "Odin, all-father, organizer of this world, good day to you, sir." "Good day to you, Loki." And then Loki whistled, and out from between the trees came the most beautiful horse Odin had ever seen. A beautiful horse the color of stars, a star-colored horse. And Loki said, "Odin, this is Sleipnir. He is the fastest horse in all the 9 worlds. He is for you." And Odin looked at that beautiful horse, and he ran his hands along that horse and scratched it behind the ears, and the horse and Odin got on very well. And Odin got on the back of that horse, and he galloped off, and suddenly you could see in the twilight a star-colored horse flying up, up, up into the sky, with Odin on the back of that horse. And if you had been looking into the pool of water outside the palace of Freya, in that pool of water you would have seen that same horse galloping across the night sky. And then a moment later, those waters shimmered, and all you could see in those waters was Freya, the goddess of love and of beauty. Well, hey. Thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for exploring it with me. As always with these stories, well, not always, but as frequently with the Norse myths, on some level they seem like cartoons to me. They seem sort of slight, but on another level they go very deep once I start getting into it a little more and feeling it. So it's probably me. It's probably how I relate to these stories. And I hope you can relate to them as well. It's good to think in images at first when you have a story. Not to turn it into a this or a that, but just to think in terms of images. What is it that calls to you, speaks to you, talks to you from this story? For me, Odin on the back of Sleipnir, flying through the sky. That's a beautiful thing at twilight. Also the builder pulling the knife from his coat. Freya singing beside the pool there. The Wall of Asgard in the moonlight. these images are more dense with information than concepts, than ideas. They bring a lot with them. They are plants rooted in the ground of the unconscious and also living in the light, the day world. They speak to our mental parts of ourselves and to our unconscious, the dream life we have. So it's good to stay with the images for a while. Live with that. The horse, Sleipnir, the gods in Gladisheim, the seasons, the sun and the moon. So I invite you to stay with that and not fill your head with ideas, mine or anybody else's, for as long as it takes to get a personal relationship to this story, which is kind of what we want. But then we put on our goggles and our thinking caps and our X-ray mythovision special decoder rings. Well, that's not really true. A decoder ring. We don't need to decode a myth, a story. We just need to get into it. So let's get into it. The time in this story is very interesting. And here it seems to be a story about the wall. They need a wall. It's broken down. They need a new wall. But you have all these celestial details. You have the sun and the moon. And Freya, we'll get to her in a second, but just in the sky, we've got the sun and the moon. And then you've got the timing of this. The builder says 18 months is what he needs. The gods say 6 months. And it's quite clear in the story, as it's come down to us from Snorri Sturluson, who was an Icelandic fellow, wrote it down about 1200. It's quite clear the deadline is the summer solstice, and he's got 6 months. So that means he begins work on the winter solstice, the darkest day of the year. And he's laboring all this time, and then he fails, of course, and the gods don't lose the sun and the moon. So it's interesting timing, isn't it? The time is moving forward, and it's getting towards summer, and that's exactly the moment when the frost giants, or a frost giant anyway, they want to steal the sun and the moon from the gods. It's pretty ultimate, right? They want to take all light from the gods. So the gods live in darkness, and there's no love, there's no beauty, because Freya is gone. So that's stealing a lot. And we can read between the lines here and see what we see, especially because, like a lot of the Norse materials, things are missing. We've only got one version of this, and it's from this fellow Snorri, who was just summarizing the story. He wasn't actually telling it in detail. So there's things he could have left out, and he's just one guy. He probably might not have known certain details, for example. But it's interesting to think. So the frost giant comes in the form of a builder, says, basically, I'll build your wall. He's luring the gods into a trap where he's going to steal the sun, the moon, and Freya herself. So Freya, her love and her beauty and her powers must be known to the frost giants for them to have done this, right? And is this a plan by all of the frost giants and they've just sent this one guy? Or is it this particular frost giant's idea to steal all these things from the gods? We don't know, but it's interesting to think about the possibilities. And then, for me, what clicked for me in this story is realizing that the solution to their problem, it's Loki, but it's not just Loki, it's actually love, right? Loki knows, he's aware that love exists in the world, and like Loki himself, cannot be controlled or hemmed in, cannot be disciplined into certain patterns. So this frost giant wants to steal love and beauty from the world, take it away, and Loki, in some deeper way, it seems to me, he has the understanding that you can't steal love and beauty. It's not a thing. Or in this case, it's not limited to Freya herself. She may embody it. She may hasten the journey of these powers into our world. She may celebrate them and glorify them, but it's a power that is beyond her. If it begins with her, it also flows out to all things in the universe. So Loki, in his own, uncatchable way, he's an uncatchable sort of being, he understands this about love, and he uses that to get the gods out of the deal by becoming a horse himself, right? I mean, spoiler alert, but hopefully, that's the story. He becomes a female horse. He lures Svadilfari away, and they have a good time there in the forest. And then Loki gives birth to Sleipnir, Odin's horse. So once I really kind of thought about this myth and that capacity, the way in which love solves the problem of the story, it felt to me like this is more a story about love and beauty than it is about building a wall. The wall is really the pretext for this. And so I'll just say that's why I put Freya at the beginning and end of the story. She's not there in Snorri's version in that way. Snorri's version just summarizes it and says, they had a problem, they had no wall, and this guy showed up and was going to build it. So anyway, I added her just because I feel personally she's sort of central to the story. And that's what storytellers do. You're always getting somebody's interpretation, and in this case, mine. And it's not an interpretation in words. It's not an interpretation in, well, I believe this is this. It's an interpretation in images. It's my particular dream of this story. And may you have your own. May you explore the story in your own way and find other things in it that I haven't found. But in any case, that's what I find in this story, and I love the way it works and becomes this meditation on love and beauty in a way. And of course, what's being built is a wall, right? I mean, I don't know, how far can we go with this? But the gods want to be safe. They want to be safe, but they're also walling themselves off from other forces. And somehow that is very interesting to this whole question of love and its ability to cross boundaries in the form of the horse, which Loki becomes. So the fact that they're building a wall seems very significant to me and very interesting. And perhaps that's the deal the builder's offering the gods, really, which is this. It's you can be completely safe. You can have a wall and you'll be completely safe, but to do that, love must go from your world. So that's the exchange. If you want to be completely safe, there's no love. And if you want to have love, you are not safe, right? As the poet Tony Hoagland says in one of his beautiful and fierce poems, as long as there is desire, none of us are safe. As long as there is desire, none of us are safe. So it is. The builder, who's a frost giant, of course, comes promising safety. You'll have this wall, you'll be safe, but the price of that safety is the absence of love. You must give me love. There will be no love in your world if you get this wall. Now, of course, the gods find a way to beat that and to get their wall and to have love all the same, thanks to Loki. That's the trickiness of it. And we can also say that wall is not as permanent as they think it is, and eventually, in the great battle and conflagration of Ragnarok, at the end of the cycle of Norse myths, that wall will not help them. But for quite a while it does, and there's many stories in which it is helpful for them. So, I don't know, we might think, when have we traded safety for love? Clearly that's something I did, clearly. Well, that's something I did a lot growing up. I was scared, right? I remember roller skating. Oh my God, roller skating. Gosh, was I born in the 50s? No, I wasn't. But there was one roller skating rink in my town, and we would go, and everything would be fine. We'd all be whirling around. I forget how old I was, not that old, 11 or 12. And then the music would change, and suddenly all the girls would line up against the wall of the roller skating rink. And the boys had to, that was the story, that was how this ritual went. Everybody somehow knew, I didn't get instructions, but somehow everybody knew. The boys had to go in circles in the middle and then choose a girl to skate with and pick her out of the crowd and skate around together. I don't know how this arrangement was arrived at. I've got no clue. We're talking, when are we talking? We're talking 1982 probably in America, North America, upstate New York. That was the deal. And of course, I wanted no part of that. I was out of there. As soon as that music changed, I headed for the shore. I headed for the carpet, the safe carpet with the video games. And I would just be there until it was all over. Because that was, oh gosh, horrendous. To have to choose somebody? Ridiculous. Oh gosh, not for me. So that's just one example. Haven't we all perhaps made these choices? Or maybe not. Don't let me speak for you. Maybe you jumped into the fire. Praises be to those who jump into the fire, yes. as we all must do sooner or later. And eventually I jumped into that fire as well. But in any case, love and safety, can we have both? This myth says that, well, I guess you can have both, kind of, but only if you're tricky and if you're a god. Well, only if you're tricky, at least. What else would I say? Freya, just an interesting character, an interesting goddess in the Norse world. There's some things about her I have not included in this particular story. Freya she loved cats. She loves cats. Perhaps we should say she's in the present tense, right? Are the gods dead? Well, yes or no, or maybe not. They're all around us. I'm dictating. I am creating this recording on a Friday, which is, of course, Freya's Day. And that feeling of Friday. Thank God it's Friday. That feeling of I'm done working at the concrete factory. Let's have a cocktail. Let's relax a little bit. That, perhaps, is right there, the tone and the flavor and the feeling of Freya. Though Freya is also fierce. As I said, she loves cats. She has a chariot pulled by cats, but let's watch that word. I mean, chariot. Who drives a chariot anymore? To me, that word comes soaked in associations with the Greek world. But let's just say she has a magical carriage, a magical conveyance that is pulled by cats. And for me, I think bobcats is what I think of, mountain lions, because there is a fierceness to Freya as well. She is one of the Vanir gods, and she knows the art of Seidr, which is the art of knowing the future and of interpreting the signals of this world, the messages of this world, to find out what will happen, and to do magic of a higher art than most of the other gods have. She brings this magic with her from the world of the Vanir gods, and she teaches it to Odin, who then learns this art. This is a magic art that is associated with women, and men did not practice this art. If they did, it was uncool, and they were not looked upon kindly. It was seen as a weak and effeminate thing. Well, maybe not weak is not the right word, but it was seen as some ways a cowardly thing for men to do. Odin is the exception. Odin did practice Seidr-magic, but he, pretty much alone of the male gods, practiced that. It's a womanly art, and Freya is the one who brings it to the gods in general and teaches it to Odin. We don't have a story about her teaching Odin, but we hear that's how it happened. So she's a remarkable character in that way. And if she sees the future, what does that mean? What about this story? What did she know about what would happen and how it would happen? Well, we can only guess. As I've said in, I think, another podcast, most of these stories come to us from Snorri Sturluson, writing in about 1200 in Iceland. About half of what we know about the Norse myths comes from him. This story exists only in a summary he did in his manuscript, his book, Gylfaginning, which is the tricking of Gylfi, who's a character. This manuscript was a gift to King Hakon, Hakon, of Norway. Why are we thinking about this? Well, he was giving it to a king who was on the young side and was, of course, a man. Snorri was a man as well. So in many ways, I don't find it surprising that we're missing stories about the goddesses. The Norse world was divided into a male and a female realm. Equality wasn't quite the issue, I would say, not having been there, but from what I've studied about this, it's more just men and women are in different realms, and they both are sort of sovereign of their realms, but they don't mix. So I would guess that women told stories which men did not know, and vice versa. And so in Snorri's writings, we have a man writing for another man and giving him stories which emphasize the strength, the power, and the battles of the gods. I would hazard a guess that there are stories of the goddesses, we just do not know them. It's not that they didn't exist. It's not that the goddesses were less important. It's just that we don't have them because most of the versions we have just come from Snorri. So we have these tantalizing details about Freya. goddess of love and of beauty, a fierce goddess as well, who brought Seidr-magic, the magic of seeing the future, the magic of doing many other things as well, and she had cats as her companions. She has a child named Hnoss, Hnoss, that means treasure, and she has a husband named Oath, O-O-D, with a line through the D, but he's never around. He's off wandering, and so she is perpetually sad, and she weeps, and her tears are red gold, which you can find in the stones. Freya's tears is what you call the gold when you find it in the rock. These are all great details. So as a storyteller, as a thinking, dreaming human, for any of us, we can just dream our way into this story, into this character, and imagine what she might have meant. For she was sacred. Don't let any comic angles on this story convince you otherwise. These gods were worshipped by the Norse peoples for a long, long time. And so we should treat these beings with respect. For as Freya says, love is a power in this world. These gods are a power in this world. And in some ways, they're all around us. In many ways, they are still here. So may we all know the delights of love. May we all be safe as well. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for those who have supported this podcast through Patreon. That's a big help and helps to make this happen. You can find more stories on my website, which is jayleeming.com, jayleeming.com, as well as ways to support this work of storytelling through Patreon. Thanks very much. May the stars whirl above your head. May they be solid as rocks. May they be the cold nails in the sky holding together the firmament. May you walk on the green earth. May you walk even in winter remembering the green earth. For I do create this podcast in November as the light is shrinking, as darkness is growing in its power over this earth. But I look ahead to the springtime, which will come, in which the bees hum and the flowers buzz themselves with the music that draws the bees there. And every day is like honey. Thanks for listening to this, and take care.